Welcome to StoryGrove, where we share screen-free stories for kids without noisy advertisements. We hope you enjoy. The Three Little Pigs and the Big Bad Wolf's Cooking Show, a screen-free tale. In the forest town of Grubville, tucked between a babbling creek and towering mountains, three little pigs ran the most famous restaurants around. But these weren't just any restaurants. Each pig had crafted their eatery with care, charm, and a theme that echoed their unique style. Percy's restaurant, the Straw Shack Cafe, was the first stop for many hungry forest creatures. Percy, the youngest pig, had built his cafe himself. The walls were decorated with golden paint that looked like fields of straw. Inside, hay bales doubled as chairs and straw mats covered the floors. Percy was quick, cheerful, and specialised in light, simple food: fluffy pancakes, berry smoothies, and sandwiches stacked high with greens. A short stroll down Nutmeg Lane brought you to Penny's spot, the Stick and Skillet Bistro. Penny's restaurant was a retro-style place. Lanterns dangled from the rafters, menus were printed on wooden slabs, and the aroma of sizzling flatbreads floated through the air. Penny was known for her flair: forest salads, nutty desserts, flatbreads sprinkled with edible flowers. Presentation was her specialty, and customers adored it. And finally, at the end of the cobbled street stood Pete's pride, the stalwart brick oven grill. Pete, the eldest, had crafted his restaurant from sturdy red bricks, complete with a tall chimney and a roaring brick pizza oven inside. Heavy wooden tables filled the space, and the portions were legendary. Pete served up hearty stews, roasted veggies, bubbling pies, and wood-fired pizzas. Customers always left stuffed, smiling, and impressed by the solid, no-nonsense atmosphere. Life was good for the three little pigs, until the wolf arrived. He came driving a polished black sports car, parking right in the middle of the village square. Tall, sleek, and dressed in an expensive tailored suit, Walter Wolf wasn't interested in blowing houses down these days. No, he had something much more devious in mind. Walter, CEO of Big Bad Enterprises, strode confidently down the street, gold-plated briefcase in hand. He paused first at Percy's Straw Shack Cafe.
"Nice little spot you've got here,"
Walter drawled, flashing his sharp grin.
"But wouldn't it be better as part of a larger chain, something more profitable?"
Percy blinked, nervously wiping flour off his snout. Thanks, but I like running things my way." Walter tapped his briefcase.
"You'll want to reconsider. I have contracts that say otherwise."
Next, Walter stepped into Penny's Stick and Skillet Bistro.
"Charming atmosphere,"
he said smoothly, eyeing the twig chandeliers.
"But let's be honest, how long can a boutique bistro like this last on its own? Why not sell? I can roll your brand out nationwide."
Penny crossed her arms. "No, thank you. I like knowing every customer." Walter adjusted his tie.
"That's a shame. You'll be hearing from my lawyers."
Finally, Walter strutted into Pete's brick oven grill.
"Solid, reliable, brick's a classic."
Walter nodded, tapping a wall.
"But business is business. Sell now or, well, I'm sure you know how contracts work."
Pete raised an eyebrow. "Not interested." Walter gave a shark-like smile.
Fine, then we'll do it publicly."
He pulled a thick stack of papers from his briefcase.
"Here's the deal. Appear on my new cooking show, The Big Bad Bake Off."
He snapped open the contract.
"If you refuse, I'll push these legal documents through and claim your properties by default."
Ellie the pig stared at him, stunned.
"But,"
Walter continued,
"if you agree and somehow win, I'll rip up the contracts and you keep everything."
The stakes couldn't be clearer: win or lose their beloved restaurants and homes to Big Bad Enterprises. The pigs huddled quickly. "We can't let him bully us out of our homes," Percy whispered. "I say we show him what real cooking looks like," Penny added. Pete gave a determined nod. They turned back to Walter. "We'll do it," Pete said. "We accept the challenge." Walter's grin widened.
"Excellent. See you at the bake-off, pigs."
He strutted off, leaving the siblings staring after him, hearts pounding but resolved. The stage was set, the cook-off was on, and the fate of their restaurants hung in the balance. The day of the big bad bake-off arrived, and Grubville was buzzing with excitement. The forest square had been transformed into a glittering outdoor kitchen stadium. Tall banners flapped in the breeze, emblazoned with the words, "Battle for the Bistro." Cameras swung from cranes, spotlights lit up the treetops, and a row of curious animal spectators filled bleachers made from logs and hay bales. At the centre, two massive kitchen stations stood side by side. On one side, the sleek, polished silver counters of Team Big Bad Enterprises. Uniformed sous chefs, wolves, foxes, and one very serious-looking badger, sharpened knives and stirred sauces in synchronized perfection. Their equipment gleamed so brightly, it nearly blinded the audience. On the other side, the cosier, colourful station of the Three Little Pigs, decorated with straw baskets, twig bowls, and the brick oven Pete had personally built the night before. Percy, Penny, and Pete wore matching aprons stitched with little pig snouts and nervous, determined smiles. The stakes couldn't be higher. Win and they'd keep their restaurants and homes. Lose and Walter Wolf would gobble up their businesses like a tray of free samples. The host, a fast-talking raccoon in a sparkly blazer, hopped on stage. "Welcome to the Big Bad Bake-Off. Today's theme, Forest Fusion Feast. Teams must prepare 3 dishes, a starter, a main course, and a dessert, all showcasing local ingredients. Judges will score based on creativity, flavour, and presentation." The crowd cheered and stomped their paws. Walter Wolf adjusted his tie smugly, giving the pigs a wink.
"Ready to lose, piglets?"
He sneered. Pete just nodded. "We'll see." The raccoon host raised a paw. "Contestants, start your ovens. Now!" A bell rang and chaos erupted. Round 1, the starter. Team Big Bad moved like a machine. Knives chopped, pans sizzled. Walter barked orders.
"Get those wild mushroom tarts plated. Where's my truffle drizzle? Who forgot the time?"
Their sous chefs zipped back and forth, eyes narrowed, sweat glistening. Meanwhile, the pigs scrambled. Percy darted between baskets of berries, nuts, and greens. Penny lined up plates, sketching stick figure designs in her notebook. Pete manned the brick oven, tossing logs inside. "What if we do a twist on forest bruschetta?" Penny suggested, tossing wild herbs to Percy. Percy grinned. "With a dandelion vinaigrette?" Pete nodded. "And roasted chestnuts on top." They raced to assemble crunchy twig crisps, topped with fresh greens, wild berries, and the chestnut crumble. Penny drizzled the vinaigrette with a flourish. Then, crash! Walter, in his haste, slipped on a rogue stick one of his sous chefs dropped. His towering chef's hat toppled forward, straight into a pan of flambéed mushrooms. Within seconds, his hat was ablaze.
"Fire! Fire!"
Walter screeched, running around like a scared baby goat, waving his arms as smoke billowed from his head. One of his fox sous chefs finally dumped a bucket of flour over him, leaving him covered head to toe in white dust, blinking wildly. The audience roared with laughter. Even the raccoon host wiped tears from his eyes. The pigs exchanged grins but kept hustling. Just as the bell rang, they presented their berry chestnut bruschetta surprise, fresh and colourful. Round 2, the main course. Walter's team pulled themselves together, now flustered but determined. They revealed their slick, towering creation, glazed venison skewers balanced atop fancy leaf plates, drizzled with something golden. It looked fancy, but the judges squinted suspiciously as a squirrel sous chef wiped ash off the edges. The pigs huddled. "What do we do for main?" Percy panted, bits of flour still flying, and Pete thought fast. "Wood-fired pizza, but forest style." Penny grabbed mushrooms, wild garlic, and colourful forest veggies. Percy whipped up dough faster than a rabbit in roller skates. Pete rolled it out and slid it into the brick oven. Meanwhile, one of Walter's sous chefs accidentally flung a bundle of uncooked pasta into the audience. A row of chipmunks caught it mid-air and began juggling it, much to the crowd's delight.
"Focus!"
Walter roared, steam practically coming out of his ears. The pigs, calm and cheerful, layered their pizza with wild greens and roasted roots. Penny carved tiny animals out of cheese and perched them on top. Moments before the bell, they served up their Wildwood Pizza Supreme, crispy, colourful and bubbling. The scent wafted across the stadium, and even Walter's Badger sous chef licked his lips. Round 3, the dessert. Now came the final round. Walter's team unveiled an impossibly tall soufflé, dusted with gold sugar. Cameras zoomed in. The judges nodded. The pigs gathered. "We're behind," Percy whispered, eyeing Walter's towering dessert. Penny's eyes sparkled. "Forest mud pie, but let's go big." Percy and Pete jumped into action. Pete ground hazelnuts for the crust. Percy whipped chocolate until his arms ached. Penny carefully layered wild berries and secret jam swirls. Just as Pete slid the pie into their brick oven, there was a yelp from Walter's side. A sugar sculpture meant to crown their soufflé collapsed, sending shards flying like candy confetti. Walter nearly fainted, pulling at his tie as his sous chef scrambled to fix it. Meanwhile, Penny grabbed spun sugar, shaping tiny trees and animals. Percy added sugared flowers. Pete sprinkled powdered sugar like fresh snow. Seconds before the bell, they presented their forest mud pie extravaganza, shimmering under the lights. The bell rang, the bake-off was done. The pigs wiped sweat from their brows. Walter stood frozen, hatless, and still dusted in flour. The raccoon host grinned. The pigs exchanged hopeful, exhausted looks. Their fate and their homes hung in the balance. A few minutes later, and the crowd in Grubville's town square leaned forward with anticipation on their hay bale seats. The forest air practically buzzed with tension. The bake-off was over, the tables were set, and the dishes gleamed under the spotlights. Now all that remained was the judging. At one end of the stage stood Walter Wolfe, still brushing flour out of his fur and scowling fiercely. His soufflé tower wobbled dangerously beside him, and a single sugar shard clung to his snout. At the other end, the 3 little pigs stood shoulder to shoulder, aprons dusted but proud, their dishes lined up in all their colourful, rustic glory. The raccoon host adjusted his sparkly blazer and grabbed the microphone. "Ladies and gentle animals, it's time," he boomed. "Let's meet our esteemed judges." Out waddled 3 figures. 1. Professor Porcupine, known for his prickly food critiques and love of spice. 2. Madame Bluebird, famous for her delicate palate and eye for presentation. 3. Chef Bruno Bear, a culinary legend who could sniff out a bad dish from a mile away, literally. The judges took their seats at the long judging table, napkins tucked in. First up, the appetizers. Walter's team presented their wild mushroom tarts, plated with a fancy drizzle. Professor Porcupine took a bite and raised an eyebrow. "Nice pastry, but a little bland." Madame Bluebird pecked delicately. "Presentation is fine, but lacking whimsy." Chef Bruno Bear frowned. "Where's the kick? Needs more forest flavour." Walter twitched nervously. Then came the pig's berry chestnut bruschetta surprise. The judge's eyes lit up at the colourful pile of berries, greens and crunchy chestnuts. Professor Porcupine munched thoughtfully. "Now this has texture." Madame Bluebird clapped her wings. "Charming, fresh and fun." Chef Bruno Bear gave a satisfied grunt. "Good balance. I'd eat 3 more." The crowd cheered as Walter's tail drooped slightly. Judging round 2, main course. Walter's glazed venison skewers were up next. The judges examined the glossy skewers, nibbling politely. Professor Porcupine frowned. "Too much glaze. Can't taste the meat." Madame Bluebird tilted her head. "It's shiny, that's all." Chef Bruno Bear gave a polite cough. "Overcomplicated. Less is more." Walter's ears twitched. Then came the pig's Wildwood Pizza Supreme. A cheer erupted as the judges took slices, gooey cheese stretching perfectly, wild mushrooms and veggies arranged artfully. Professor Porcupine beamed. "Crunchy, savoury, perfect crust." Madame Bluebird dabbed her beak. Charming presentation, adorable cheese animals. Chef Bruno Bear roared happily. Reminds me of my grandma's forest flatbread. The pigs exchanged excited glances. Walter adjusted his collar. Judging round 3, dessert. Walter's towering souffle stood next, slightly leaning but still intact. Professor Porcupine poked it with a fork. Impressive height, but hollow. Madame Bluebird pecked. Sweet, but no surprise. Chef Bruno Bear squinted. Feels safe. Walter's smile faltered. Finally, the pigs unveiled their forest mud pie extravaganza. Layers of chocolate, berries, hazelnuts, with spun sugar trees perched delicately on top. The judge's eyes widened. Professor Porcupine took a big bite. Crunch, cream, fruit, delicious. Madame Bluebird fluttered. Whimsical. I love the spun sugar forest. Chef Bruno Bear let out a delighted growl. Best dessert I've had all year. The crowd went wild. Walter tugged at his tie, now visibly sweating. Final verdict. The raccoon host hopped back on stage. Well, folks, the judges have spoken. The judges whispered, nodded, scribbled notes, and then handed the raccoon a golden envelope. He dramatically tore it open. And the winner is... The crowd held its breath. The 3 little pigs. The audience exploded with cheers. Confetti cannons burst, showering the square with glittering leaves and berry petals. Walter Wolf's jaw dropped. His soufflé tower finally gave up, collapsing into a heap of sugary rubble. To make matters worse, a nearby camera zoomed in on his stunned, flour-dusted face, broadcasting it to every screen in Grubville. Professor Porcupine approached the pigs. You 3 cooked with heart, creativity, teamwork, and real forest flavour. Madame Bluebird nodded. Delightful, through and through. Chef Bruno Bear gave them each a hearty pat on the back. You've earned your restaurants. The raccoon host handed Pete a large official certificate labelled Grubville's Culinary Champions, ownership secured. Walter slunk off stage, muttering something about contract loopholes and never trusting badger sous chefs again. The pigs laughed, arms around each other, as the crowd celebrated. Their restaurants and their homes were safe, and from that day forward, no one ever underestimated the power of good food, teamwork, and a little piggy persistence. Thanks for listening to today's story. We hope you enjoyed it and feel calm and cozy. If you'd like more screen-free, ad-free, and wholesome stories, don't forget to follow our channel. Or hop on over to our YouTube channel for even more wholesome screen-free tales. See you next time.